Rain has always been something people find relaxing. The sound of drops hitting the window, the cold wind outside, the darkness covering the streets. It feels peaceful. But sometimes, rain hides things you were never supposed to see. Tonight, we're going to uncover 3 true rainy night horror stories that started with something completely normal. A storm, a quiet road, a locked house. But by the end of the night, these people realized they were not alone. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and ask yourself one question. What would you do if you heard something outside your window during a storm, and you knew nobody should be there? Story 1. The stranger standing outside during the storm. It was around 2 a.m. when Michael woke up to the sound of heavy rain hitting his bedroom window. The storm was violent, the kind of storm where the entire house shakes with every strong gust of wind. Michael lived alone in a small house surrounded by trees. There were no neighbors nearby, no streetlights, just darkness. At first, he thought the noise that woke him was just the storm, until he heard something else. A knock. 3 slow knocks on his front door. Michael froze. Nobody visits at 2 a.m., especially during a storm like this. He grabbed his phone and checked the security camera near the entrance. At first, the screen showed nothing. Only rain, only darkness. Then lightning flashed across the sky. And for 1 second, the camera revealed a person standing outside his door. A man, completely still, not moving, not trying to escape the rain, just standing there. Michael felt his heart drop. He zoomed in on the camera. The stranger was facing the door, almost like he was waiting for Michael to open it. Then something even stranger happened. The man slowly raised his hand and pointed directly at the camera. Michael immediately stepped away from the screen because he realized something terrifying. The stranger knew he was watching. Rain has a strange way of changing everything. During the day, a house feels safe, a road feels familiar, and the world outside feels normal. But when the sun disappears and heavy rain starts covering the streets, every sound becomes different. A simple knock on the door feels terrifying. A shadow outside the window feels impossible to ignore. And a voice in the darkness can make you question your own mind. Tonight, we are exploring 3 true rainy night horror stories where ordinary people experienced moments they still cannot explain. A stranger standing outside during a violent storm. A lonely road where someone heard a voice calling their name. And a house where the rain was not the only thing moving in the darkness. These stories remind us of one terrifying truth. Sometimes the safest place you know can become the place you fear the most. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and stay until the end. Because after hearing these stories, you might think twice before looking outside your window on a rainy night. Story 1. The stranger standing outside during the storm. Voiceover script, part 1. It was a cold October night when Michael first heard the knocking. The storm had arrived without warning. Heavy rain was hitting the roof so loudly that it sounded like thousands of fingers tapping against the house. The wind moved through the trees surrounding his property, creating long, disturbing shadows across the walls. Michael lived alone in a small house at the end of a quiet road. The nearest neighbor was almost half a mile away. There were no streetlights, no traffic, no one who would randomly show up in the middle of the night. And that was exactly why the sound scared him. Because at 2:13 a.m., someone knocked on his front door 3 times, slowly. Knock, knock, knock. Michael opened his eyes and looked toward his bedroom door. For a few seconds, he convinced himself he had imagined it. Maybe it was just a branch hitting the house. Maybe the wind had moved something outside. Then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. This time there was no doubt. Someone was standing at his front door. Michael reached for his phone and checked the time. 2:15 a.m. His first thought was that someone might need help. Maybe there had been an accident. Maybe someone was lost in the storm. But another thought quickly entered his mind. Why would anyone walk this far in the middle of a storm? And why would they knock so quietly? Michael slowly got out of bed. The floor creaked beneath his feet. He walked toward the hallway, trying not to make any noise. The entire house felt different. A few minutes earlier, it was his home, a place where he felt safe. Now every dark corner felt like it was hiding something. As he reached the living room, another flash of lightning lit up the room. And for a brief second, he saw a shadow through the glass window beside the door. Someone was outside. Michael froze. He grabbed his phone and opened the security camera app. The camera pointed directly at the front entrance. At first, the screen showed nothing, only rain pouring down. The image was blurry because of the water covering the camera lens. Michael stared at the screen, waiting. Then another lightning strike flashed, and suddenly, a figure appeared. A man was standing just a few feet away from the front door, completely still. No umbrella, no jacket, no attempt to protect himself from the freezing rain. He was simply standing there, looking at the door. Michael felt a cold feeling move through his body, because the man wasn't trying to get inside. He wasn't asking for help. He wasn't moving at all. He looked like he was waiting for something. And then, the man slowly lifted his head and looked directly into the security camera. Michael stepped back from his phone, because there was one terrifying possibility he couldn't ignore. The stranger knew that Michael was watching him. Story 1, the stranger standing outside during the storm. Part 2, Michael stood frozen in the middle of his living room. His eyes were locked on the security camera screen. The man outside had not moved, not even once. The rain continued pouring over him, soaking his clothes completely, but he acted like he couldn't feel it, like the storm around him didn't matter. Michael slowly lowered the brightness on his phone and watched from behind the wall. He didn't want the stranger to know where he was standing. For the first time that night, a thought entered his mind. What if this person wasn't lost? What if he came there on purpose? Michael looked around the room. The doors were locked. The windows were closed. But suddenly his own house felt unfamiliar. Every small sound made him nervous. The wind, the rain, the old wooden floor moving beneath him. Then, the knocking stopped. For almost 30 seconds, there was complete silence. Michael looked back at the camera. The man was still standing there. But now, something had changed. The stranger was no longer looking at the door. He was looking toward the side of the house, toward the bedroom window. Michael's stomach dropped, because his bedroom window was on the other side of the house. The same window where he had been sleeping only minutes earlier. He slowly backed away. Then his phone vibrated. Michael almost dropped it. It was a notification from the security camera. Motion detected. His hand started shaking. The camera had detected movement, but the person outside had not moved. Confused, Michael looked at the screen again. The camera view changed automatically. It switched from the front door camera to the backyard camera. And that's when Michael saw something that made his blood run cold. There was another person, standing near the back fence, watching the house. Michael couldn't breathe. There wasn't one stranger outside. There were two. For a moment, he wondered if he should call the police. But before he could unlock his phone, the power went out. The entire house went dark. The sound of the storm became louder than ever. Michael stood completely still. He couldn't see anything. He couldn't hear anything except the rain. Then, a sound came from the hallway. A slow movement, like someone stepping on the wooden floor. Creak! Michael's heart started racing, because the hallway led directly to the front door. And he knew the front door was still locked. He grabbed the nearest object he could find and slowly moved forward. One step, then another. The darkness around him felt heavy. As he reached the hallway, lightning flashed through the windows, and for one brief second, he saw the front door. It was still closed, but something was different. A small piece of paper had been pushed underneath the door. Michael stared at it. He waited. He didn't want to touch it, but curiosity eventually won. He slowly picked up the paper. There were only 5 words written on it. 5 words that made him immediately step away from the door. The message said, "I know you're awake, Michael." Michael stared at the message in his hand for several seconds. He couldn't move. He couldn't think. The rain outside continued pounding against the windows, but everything else felt completely silent, because one question was repeating inside his mind. How did this person know his name? Michael had never seen the stranger before. He had never spoken to him, and nobody knew he was awake. At least, nobody should have known. He slowly walked backward and grabbed his phone. The power was still out. The security cameras were offline, and there was no signal. It felt like the entire world had disappeared, like he was trapped inside the house with whoever was outside. Then suddenly, his phone screen lit up. One notification appeared, a voicemail from an unknown number. Michael stared at it. He didn't want to press play. Every instinct inside him was telling him not to, but the fear of not knowing was stronger. He tapped the message. For the first few seconds, there was only static. Then he heard something. Heavy breathing. Someone was standing close to the phone. And then, a voice whispered, "Michael." His entire body went cold, because it was the same voice he had heard outside his door. The message continued, "Don't look outside." Michael froze. The warning made no sense. If someone was outside, why would they tell him not to look? Then the voice said something that terrified him even more. "Because I'm not the one standing there." Michael slowly looked toward the front window. His hands were shaking. The stranger outside was still visible through the security camera. But now, the figure was different. The man was no longer standing near the door. He was standing at the edge of the property, looking toward the house. And behind him, near the trees, Michael saw another shadow. Something moving, something much closer. He immediately stepped away from the window. The voicemail ended. A few seconds later, the power returned. The lights came back on. The cameras restarted. Michael quickly checked the front camera. The stranger was gone. The yard was empty. The rain was still falling, but there was no sign that anyone had ever been there. The next morning, Michael called the police. Officers searched the entire property. They found footprints near the front door. They found the paper message, but they found something else too. Near the back fence, they discovered footprints leading toward the house, not away from it. The police asked Michael one question that he still thinks about today. They asked, "Are you sure you were alone in the house that night?" Michael never found out who the stranger was, or who left the message. But years later, whenever a storm begins, he still checks his windows, because he learned something that night. Rain can hide many things, and sometimes, the person standing outside your house isn't the one you should be afraid of. Story 2, The Voice That Came from the Empty Road. After what happened to Michael during the storm, you might think a rainy night couldn't get any more terrifying. But for Sarah, the rain didn't just hide something outside her home. It followed her onto a road where nobody should have been. It was a Friday night in November. Sarah was driving home after working late. The journey usually took around 40 minutes. Most of the drive was through quiet country roads, surrounded by forests and empty fields. During the day, the road was peaceful, but at night, especially during a storm, it felt completely different. The rain had become heavier. Her windshield wipers were moving as fast as they could, but visibility was getting worse every minute. The road ahead was almost invisible. There were no other cars, no houses, no lights, just darkness and the sound of rain hitting the car. Sarah turned down the radio and focused on driving. Then suddenly, the music stopped. The speakers filled with static. She tapped the radio, thinking it was just a signal problem. But then something strange happened. Through the static, she heard a voice, a quiet voice, a voice that sounded like it was coming from far away. At first, she couldn't understand the words. Then the static cleared for a second, and she heard it. Her name, Sarah. Her hands tightened around the steering wheel. She looked around the car. Nobody was there. She turned off the radio immediately. The silence inside the car felt even worse. For a few minutes, she convinced herself it was just interference, a random sound, a coincidence. Until her phone rang. Sarah looked at the screen. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Hello?" For several seconds, there was nothing, only the sound of rain. Then a whisper came through the speaker. "Don't stop the car." Sarah felt a wave of fear move through her body. "Who is this?" No answer, only static. Then the voice said, "You're about to see someone on the road." The call ended. Sarah stared ahead. Her heart was beating faster. She wanted to believe it was some kind of prank. A wrong number. Anything. Then a few seconds later, her headlights caught something in the distance. Someone was standing in the middle of the road. Sarah immediately slowed down. A person, standing completely still, wearing dark clothes, facing away from the car. She reached for her phone. She wanted to call someone, but before she could, the figure slowly turned around, and Sarah noticed something strange. The person was not looking at her. They were looking behind her. Sarah checked the rearview mirror. At first, she saw nothing, only the empty road behind her. Then lightning flashed, and for 1 second, she saw another figure standing behind her car. Sarah's breathing stopped. She pressed the gas pedal and drove away. She didn't look back, not once. When she finally reached a gas station several miles away, she pulled over. Her hands were shaking. She looked at her phone. The unknown number had sent her a message. There was only one sentence. "You were never supposed to stop." Sarah immediately showed the message to the gas station worker. But when they tried calling the number back, they discovered something impossible. The number didn't exist. The next day, Sarah returned to the same road with police officers. They found something disturbing. Near the place where she saw the figure, there was an old roadside memorial, a small cross, a photograph, and a name. The name belonged to a woman who had died there years earlier. On a rainy night, The police told Sarah something that made the entire experience even stranger. Several people had reported seeing a woman standing on that road during storms. Always in the same place, always looking behind the approaching cars. Sarah never drove that road again, but she still remembers one thing from that night. The voice on the phone didn't warn her about the person standing in the road. It warned her because something else was already behind her. And sometimes, the most terrifying thing about a dark, empty road is realizing you might not be the only one traveling on it. Story 3. Someone was inside the house during the rainstorm. The first 2 stories showed us something terrifying. A storm can make familiar places feel completely different. A quiet road can become frightening. A simple knock can become a warning. But sometimes, the scariest place during a storm isn't outside. It's your own home. This is the story of Emily and the night she realized the sound she was hearing inside her house was not caused by the rain. It happened on a stormy night in December. Emily was home alone while her husband was away on a business trip. The weather had been getting worse throughout the evening. Heavy rain, strong winds, thunder that shook the windows. Emily didn't usually mind storms. In fact, she found the sound of rain relaxing. She made some tea, turned on a movie, and tried to ignore the weather outside. For a while, everything felt normal, until around midnight. That's when she heard the first sound, a small noise coming from upstairs, a sound like something had fallen. Emily paused the movie. She listened carefully. Nothing. She waited. After a few seconds, she laughed at herself. It was probably just the wind, or maybe something had moved because of the vibration from the storm. She turned the movie back on. Then she heard it again. This time, it was different. A slow movement. A single step coming from the hallway upstairs. Emily's smile disappeared because she knew that sound. It sounded exactly like someone walking. She grabbed her phone and checked the security system. The front door was locked. The windows were closed. Everything looked normal. But the strange thing was, the motion sensor upstairs had been activated. Emily stared at the screen. Her first thought was simple. Someone had broken into the house. But then she noticed something else. The camera upstairs wasn't working. The screen was completely black. She tried restarting it. Nothing. The storm had caused a power issue in that part of the house. Or at least, that's what she hoped. Emily slowly walked toward the staircase. Every instinct told her to stay downstairs, to call someone, to leave, but she needed to know. She turned on the flashlight from her phone. The beam moved slowly across the stairs. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. The entire house was silent, until she reached the top and saw something that made her freeze. The door to the guest bedroom was open. Emily was sure she had closed it earlier. She stood there for several seconds. Then she noticed something on the floor. A wet footprint. A single footprint, leading from the guest bedroom toward the hallway. Her heart started racing because the footprint was fresh. The storm was outside. The rain was falling, but someone had been inside her house. Emily slowly stepped backward. Then her phone suddenly received a notification. A security alert. She looked down. The message said, "Front door opened." Emily's blood turned cold because she was standing upstairs, and the front door was downstairs. Someone was moving through her house. She ran into the bedroom and locked the door. She called the police. Then she heard something outside, a quiet voice, coming from the hallway. "Emily." She covered her mouth to stop herself from making a sound. The voice came again. "Emily, I know you're in there." But the terrifying part wasn't that someone knew her name. The terrifying part was, the voice sounded exactly like her husband. The police arrived 15 minutes later. They searched every room, every closet, every corner of the house, but they found nobody. However, they did find something disturbing. The back door had been unlocked, and near the entrance, they found a set of wet footprints. The footprints came from outside. They entered the house, but they never left. The police never discovered who had been inside, and Emily moved out less than a month later. Years passed, but she never forgot that night, because whenever a storm begins and she hears footsteps in the house, she remembers the same terrifying thought. The rain outside wasn't the thing that scared her. It was the possibility that someone had been standing inside her home, listening to her the entire time. 3 rainy nights, 3 terrifying encounters, and 3 reminders that sometimes the things we fear the most are not always hiding in the darkness outside. Sometimes they are waiting on the other side of a door. Sometimes they are standing on an empty road. And sometimes they are already inside the place where we feel the safest. Maybe these stories were just unexplained events. Maybe there is a logical explanation for everything that happened. But one question still remains. If you were alone on a stormy night and you heard a knock at your door, would you open it? Or would you stay silent and hope whatever was outside eventually leaves? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy true horror stories, mysterious encounters, and unexplained events, subscribe to the Hidden Fear Archive, because here we explore the stories that make you question what is real and what might be hiding in the shadows. Until next time, keep the lights on, and remember, some fears don't come from the darkness. They come from what the darkness reveals.